Namaste and welcome to the Bharat Varta podcast. Over the last couple of months, Punjab has been the seat of high political drama as the state braces itself for elections in a few months' time. To analyze everything that has happened and what we should expect going forward, we have a resident political expert, Rohit Jayaraman, on the podcast. Rohit, as you know, has appeared on multiple Bharat Varta podcasts. His political acumen is peerless, while a lot of political commentary tends to focus on the anecdotal and basically he said, she said type of commentary. Rohit looks at the numbers and the evidence while marrying it to the history of the region to offer rich, insightful perspectives. So, Rohit, welcome back.
Thanks, Gary. Always great to be back on Bharat Varta. Thanks for the kind words.
No, great to have you on the podcast. Every time we speak, it's a learning experience for me. And wish you a very happy Mahanavami.
Thank you. Wish you the same too.
All right, Rohit, we have a lot of ground to cover. To begin with, let's just set some context, right? Describe to our listeners what has happened in Punjab over the last couple of months. We've seen plenty of turmoil, a lot of political change.
So, I think what's basically happened in Punjab has been a culmination of, almost 5 years, right, of particular political struggle, in the sense that the basic problem in Punjab was that Captain Amarinder Singh, who was the Chief Minister of Punjab till recently, just didn't get along with Rahul Gandhi. This is something that's been an issue since even before the last elections in Punjab, where, Rahul Gandhi had actually tried to sideline Mr. Singh. But somehow the situation at that point of time wasn't conducive for him to be able to do that. And at that point of time, there was sort of itself that without Amarinder Singh, the Congress may not be able to actually win power. So Rahul Gandhi was slightly out of options, and he had to sort of reluctantly agree to keeping Mr. Singh as a front of the campaign. What's happened after that, and he was of course made the chief minister. What's happened after that, this may come as news to at least a lot of our readers who've been, or rather listeners who may have been looking at Punjab only from one perspective, is that this Mr. Amarinder Singh and his government is actually became quite unpopular. It was not a very popular government, and this is a counterintuitive in the sense that for two reasons, right? One is a lot of people on the so-called center right or right wing of the spectrum. Then he's got a lot more sympathy among certain sections of the people than you would expect a normal congressman to get. That, of course, really doesn't have any merit on his popularity at the moment in Punjab. Second, and more important thing, I think, which a lot of people might use to defend Amarinder Singh's record over the last 4 years, was actually the fact that the Congress did well in 2019 Lok Sabha elections, right? In the sense that the Congress actually managed to increase the number of seats it had from 3. I think it went up to around 8 out of 13. Key thing here is that actually happened because of a collapse in the support the Aam Aadmi Party got in Punjab at that particular point of time. But whatever it is, what happened over the last 6 months basically was Rahul Gandhi finally realized that Mr. Amarinder Singh was on a weak wicket and decided to make his move. And that's where, of course, the second great character in this drama played out, Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu, comes in, right? Now, Navjot Singh Sidhu, as a lot of people know, started his politics. Of course, he's a great cricketer and all of that. But leaving that aside, started his politics in BJP, managed to win 2 Lok Sabha elections, 2004, 2009. Didn't get a ticket in 2014 when his seat was given to Arun Jaitley, who interestingly lost to the very same Captain Amarinder Singh. He was kept out in the cold. Then he was nominated to the Rajya Sabha in 2016. But then he resigned from that and the BJP just a couple of months and then joined the Congress. Mr. Sidhu's problems with the BJP actually stem from his problems with Akali Dal, who were, of course, long-standing BJP allies, and till this whole farm bill fiasco that's happened over the last 1 year. And of course, that alliance is over. So interestingly, the BJP basically lost both Sidhu and Akali. We'll come to that in some time. Sidhu then went to the Congress and with the blessings of the Gandhi family, right? And he was immediately given a ticket. He was made a minister. And for some reason, from day one, he was launching a sort of guerrilla warfare against Amarinder Singh. This, of course, peaked around 2019 when Sidhu went to Kartarpur, hugged Imran Khan or something like that. Amarinder Singh said that's not what a nationalist should do. And, since 2000, at least in open bickering, right, between the two of them in public, and the high command, so as to speak, high command, they never intervened at any point to control Sidhu. In fact, they actually made him the Congress president, right? That happened a few months back. And that's where I think this whole thing moved up a notch, because once Sidhu was made Congress president over the very clear objections of Amrinder Singh, it meant that, the thing had basically lost complete control of the party. There was this famous breakfast thing where I think almost all the MLAs in Punjab turned up, were known to be loyalists of Amrinder Singh. And that's what I think gave push to Rahul Gandhi or the Gandhi family, I would say, to twist the knife and get rid of Amrinder Singh. And so once Amrinder Singh was removed, you saw a lot of drama for 24 hours on, who would become the chief minister. There were lots of names running about from, leaders like Sunil Jakhar or Mr. Randhawa, and even some really random names like Ambika Soni, right? Who apparently was Rahul Gandhi's first choice. And that ended up with Mr. Channi being the chief minister. The Congress used that to immediately went on an overdrive of, how he's the first Dalit CM of Punjab, and it's a whole new phenomenon in Punjab politics that a Dalit has become chief minister. And that's actually true, right? And we'll get to that later. The Congress does have a point, especially because Dalits are the single largest group in Punjab at, I think, around 32% of the population. That's the highest population in any Indian state, actually, of Dalits in India. So it's probably something there. And that's what happened. That's a factual background, right? I think now we can get into that.
Yeah. No, so that was a great opening, Rohit. And before we delve into some of the nitty-gritties, let's actually take a step back and look at how Punjab politics is unique, right? How does Punjab normally vote? What are the key considerations, the key issues, and who are the main contenders?
Sure, Gary. So basically, Punjab politics, and of course, everyone knows of the troubled 80s and early 90s, right, of Punjab, which sort of led to a lot of chaos in that region. Leaving that aside, post the whole insurgency coming to a practical end, which I think happened around the mid 90s, from around, say, 1998 till 2014, Punjab was very stable politically, right? In the sense that it had two competing blocks. One was the Congress, the other was the Akali Dal BJP alliance. How the traditional understanding, at least, of Punjab used to be that the Akalis had a sort of the stranglehold on what are called the Jat Sikh votes, right? The dominant community in Punjab. And they had a section of Hindu upper caste support, some through the BJP, some sections of Dalit support. Well, the Congress depended on primarily two things, right? One, it got the predominant amount of Hindu votes. Second, and BJP's support among upper caste Hindus in Punjab was much lesser than anywhere else in North India, primarily because of its alliance with the Akali Dal. The second feature of the Congress also got a large amount of its support from the Dalits, right? We just described have around 32% of the population, both Hindu Dalits and Sikh Dalits. And the Congress also, managed to get seats because it also had a lot of big Jat Sikh leaders, right? While the Jat Sikhs by and large were Akali Dal supporters, a lot of powerful Congress leaders who came from the community who could win seats on their own. Obviously, one example of that is Captain Amarinder Singh, but there are many others also. And a lot of the Congress leadership in Punjab did comprise of this. And this, sort of a duopoly went on till 2012, right? Parties would alternate in power. I think 98, the Akalis came to power. 2003, Congress came. 2008, the Akalis came. The Lok Sabha elections would generally see the party that was not in power at the state getting the majority of seats. So in 2004, the NDA did well in Punjab, but 2009, the UPA did well. What happened in 2012 was something interesting. 2012, the Akali BJP alliance actually managed to come back to power. They managed to retain the state, which sort of upended the traditional calculation. At the same time, 2-3 things happened over that period of 5 years, right, that completely changed the state's politics. One was the emergence of the Aam Aadmi Party. So Punjab is a state that's actually had a bad time over the last 3-4 decades. And it's not just due to insurgency. There's a lot of talk of a rampant drug problem. The state has not really managed to industrialize in the way, say, its southern and traditionally less prosperous neighbor Haryana managed. Punjab has had a serious issue, and accordingly there was a lot of discontent which sort of bubbled up after the Akali BJP alliance came back to power. So what Arun Jaitley standing in Amritsar, for instance, was one of the reasons was to actually stem that discontent. That didn't work. The Aam Aadmi Party, actually managed to use this whole vacuum to come into power right after its to make a play for power right after its spectacular performance in Delhi. Right? So in 2014, when Aam Aadmi Party couldn't really win a single seat even in Delhi because of the Modi wave, in Punjab they managed to win 4 seats, and that pointed to something deeper, right? in the sense that one, there was a lot of anti-incumbency, of course, against Akali BJP alliance. There's also, I mean, obviously anti-incumbency against the UPA government. One more thing that happened really was somehow Sikhs really didn't take to Modi in the way a lot of other communities did, right? Or I would say Hindus did. And that's where things sort of this divide between Punjab politics and remaining Indian states sort of began in 2014. So that's where the AAP grew, because people who were disillusioned with the Congress, but at the same time, they weren't happy with the Akalis either at the state level, and they were not very comfortable with Mr. Modi becoming the prime minister. They went to the AAP. And one thing that happened was the AAP over that period from 2014 to 17 was widely perceived to be soft on that small tendency among Sikh separatism among Sikhs, right? And that's where a lot of other things happened, like where Hindus who were tired of the Akali Dal consolidated behind the Congress in 2017, etc. The other thing that happened that really messed up the Akali Dal's prospects was this whole sacrilege incident, right? And I think it happened in Fatehgarh Sahib, where a bunch of miscreants, committed sacrilege by burning the Guru Granth Sahib, the most holy book of the Sikh religion. That became obviously it became a huge thing, and the government then shot at people who took out protests against this blasphemy, or sorry, rather sacrilege. That is something, the taint of which has not really gone away from the Akalis among its core constituency till today. The AAP somehow didn't manage to consolidate on all of this, and it messed up in 2017. It completely imploded in 2019, but post 2019. The farm laws, and we'll come to the farm laws later. The AAP has seen a bit of a revival in Punjab.
Yeah, so let's delve into some of the characters of this story, right? Let's start with Captain Amrinder Singh. He's been in politics since 1980. Famously, he was Rajiv Gandhi's schoolmate at Doon School. He's also of royal lineage, right, and belongs to the Fulkian dynasty from Patiala. He served in the Indian Army, and I mean, this is someone with a lot of pedigree, right? And for him to sort of be unceremoniously ousted as he was in that fashion, what really got to that? What do you think happened there?
So I think that's fundamentally where, and we've discussed this before on the podcast, right? A particular type of politics that Rahul Gandhi believes in. And Rahul Gandhi believes in some sort of a radical politics. Right? You can even see that with Kanhaiya Kumar and Jignesh Mevani being inducted. I mean, both of them are, Kanhaiya Kumar, of course, was a communist. I mean, he was literally in the communist. Jignesh Mevani is a far-left activist who was given a lot of space by the Congress in 2019. He was even given a very safe seat to contest by the Congress and, even allowed to do it as an independent because he didn't want to contest on the Congress symbol. Of course, he's now joined the Congress. So that shows that if you look at Rahul Gandhi's speeches and his words and his actions since the early days of UPA 1, right? I mean, I haven't tracked them before that. It's very clear that Rahul Gandhi is significantly to the left of even Sonia, who was, of course, significantly to the left of Rajiv or later day Indira. Rahul Gandhi, I think if you look at Indira Gandhi's second coming into politics, second coming into power, that's 1980. If you look at where, and a lot of the current Congress leaders are from that era, right? I mean, like Amrinder Singh has just mentioned. Rahul Gandhi is considerably to the left of these people. And that's where there's a fundamental disconnect, right? And of course, there's obviously a generation gap and all of that. But let's leave all of the personality issues aside, because it's very easy to get caught up in personality and personality traits. And, Rahul Gandhi doesn't respect elders, or elders don't like Rahul Gandhi being brash. And let's forget all of that, right? I mean, the key issue here, some extent, is ideological and the kind of politics that, Amrinder Singh believes in, which is probably some sort of clientelist politics. Not saying that Amrinder Singh is a raging right-winger, right? He's not. But he's probably more of a clientelist Congress-style politician, while Rahul Gandhi is more of an activist, or, while he's, of course, in the Congress, he is the preeminent leader of the Congress. His politics is drastically different from the Congress of the 80s and the 90s. Of course, Sonia Gandhi's Congress and the UPA government themselves were considerably to the left of, the 80s and the 90s Congress. But that had not really seeped into Congress ecosystem at the state level, even during the UPA time. Rahul Gandhi has made a conscious effort to change that. You can see that in his choice of chief ministers for a lot of states. Like Siddaramaiah is a very good example, right? I mean, Siddaramaiah is a known leftist. He's a known rabble-rouser from the left in his whole Ahinda politics, the kind of things he believes in. He was definitely on the left of the Janata Dal. He's definitely on the left of the Congress. If you compare Siddaramaiah's things to some of the other Congress leaders in Karnataka, you clearly see that Siddaramaiah is more on the left. He was clearly propped up by Rahul Gandhi. He's a new entrant in the party in a state which is a huge Congress tradition. He was directly made the chief minister. So that's one example. Another example, if you look at it, Another example, which is also equally controversial, right, is Bhupinder Hooda and Rahul Gandhi's constant fights with him. He tried to make Ashok Tanwar in charge of Haryana. That didn't really work out. Ashok Tanwar again is a Dalit leader. Bhupinder Hooda is an old style Jat politician. Again, clear differences of style, approach, ideology. If you go to Assam, you can see that in Rahul Gandhi preferring a Gaurav Gogoi to Himanta. I mean, obviously Himanta has now come out as a raging right-winger, and that's obviously you could say Rahul Gandhi was right in his assessment of Himanta, right? I mean, he's clearly not a congressman, or what at least Rahul Gandhi, or I think even Rajiv Gandhi wouldn't be very comfortable with the kind of politics that today probably Himanta represents. And that's clearly Rahul Gandhi took an ideological choice, right? I mean, probably congressmen of an older era would have been fine with having Himanta in Assam. I mean, the Congress in Assam has always had a right-wing Assamese Hindu element. He picked Himanta. So that's the same process that's gone on in Punjab. That's where I think, and Rahul Gandhi realized that bulk of the people at the end of the day, they're voting for the Congress. Yes, Amarinder might bring in a 2 to 3% boost, or maybe a 5% boost at best. But that doesn't mean that, Amarinder is be all and end all of the Congress in Punjab, and bulk of the people vote for the Congress. That means the Gandhi family, right? And Rahul thought maybe why not impose himself on it. Clearly, the MLAs have played along. I mean, no MLA has left with Amarinder.
But this is also the phase of the Congress during the height of the Modi wave, right? And they won subsequent elections with Captain Amarinder as the face. Does it also boil down to the fact that, Captain Amarinder was strong on his own front? He was not servile like the usual, Congress cadre, right? I mean, not saying Rahul ji, Priyanka ji, and so on, and, addressing them by first name. Do you think that would have had something to do with it as well?
I mean, I don't want to psychoanalyze this kind of a relationship, right? But what you mentioned about Amarinder Singh standing up, raking the Modi wave, etc., you need to understand that Modi himself has never been very popular in Punjab. Even Pinarayi Vijayan broke the Modi wave, right? Or Stalin did. You can mention a lot of people. I'm deliberately not mentioning Mamata Banerjee, but it's for a different reason. But there are places where the Modi wave hasn't reached. And, Punjab is one of those places. To say that it was Amarinder Singh who single-handedly blocked the Modi wave is, I think, a bit of an exaggeration. That's what Rahul Gandhi also thinks, right? What I would want to mention here to an extent is Amarinder Singh did play a key role in, preventing AAP from taking over Punjab in 2017 and not even making it a hung assembly, right? Because he was able to consolidate people, especially I think urban Hindus, who were disillusioned with the Akali Dal BJP alliance, at the same time consolidate them behind the Congress instead of allowing them to drift to AAP. So to that extent, he did serve a purpose in 2017, which is why I think the Congress they did give him that chance, right? But Punjab is a state that has huge anti-incumbency. It has it always. I'm not saying that Amarinder Singh's government is exceptionally unpopular or something, but it's unpopular and it's not on the getting a re-election, right? So now one way of looking at it is to say that, Rahul doesn't brook dissent and all of that, which is probably true. But the other interpretation, which I would want to take, is why should he brook that dissent, right? When people are actually voting for him. Right? So by and large, the people who vote for the Congress in India, or who are still voting for the Congress in India, do vote for the Gandhi family. A large majority of them do so. And it was also the right decision, right? I mean, I don't know if the Congress will come back to power, but I don't think they were definitely coming back to power without any change.
All of this is in very stark contrast to how the BJP manages chief minister transitions, right? Whether it's in Karnataka or Gujarat. What do you think the Congress is missing in this sort of a scheme?
I think there are two aspects to it, right? The first one is that the identity of these leaders, right? In the sense that Amarinder Singh is, he's like what real chief minister. Amarinder Singh is a bit different from your run-of-the-mill chief minister. Because, of course, he's a Maharaja, right? And, well, of course, titles no longer are of any value in India. He obviously has that, he takes himself seriously, right? I mean, not every leader does that. The second thing is he's been the leader of the Congress in Punjab for like more than 20 years. So clearly he thinks that, he had a stranglehold on the Congress and he wasn't going to go quietly. Now, you've seen that. The other thing is, of course, that the BJP is in power at the center, right? So it's easier for the BJP to somehow smoothen some of these things. Of course, Mr. Modi is very popular throughout the country. Now, if you look at the transitions BJP has done, it's done in Gujarat, it's done in Uttarakhand. Again, two states where everyone knows that the BJP is really getting votes because of Mr. Modi and not because of whoever was the CM. Right? It's easier to move it. That was never so clear in Punjab. The BJP, when it did it in Karnataka, it had to do things with Mr. Yediyurappa. We've discussed that before. It took a different approach, right, in Karnataka to what it did in Gujarat or Uttarakhand. Completely different approach was taken in Assam, where Himanta Biswa Sharma had emerged as a very big leader in his own right. Mr. Sonowal also moved out gracefully. these things are different, and at a very basic level, you depends on the individual's nature of the individual in person. Like when we are praising the BJP, you should remember how big a mess the BJP made in Karnataka the last time they removed Mr. Yediyurappa from power. Complete fiasco. It went on for years. So I think we shouldn't be too harsh on the Congress.
So let's get to the joker in the pack, right? So again, Navjot Singh Sidhu was an unusual choice. He was with the BJP earlier, as you mentioned, and ironically, it's the same guy who coined the term Pappu for Rahul Gandhi, right? Why do you think Rahul, in all of his wisdom, chose him?
So that's the thing, right? I don't think he has chosen him, and that's what Sidhu has also realized. In the sense that if you ask me what did Rahul Gandhi do? Rahul Gandhi or the Gandhi family, they used Sidhu as a phase of their campaign to get rid of Amrinder Singh, and they've nicely, sort of managed to shove him out of the way once that was done. I think they expected him to stay in the saddle at least till the election so that he would deliver vote. He doesn't seem to be interested in playing along there. But it's been, I think, 2 to 3 weeks since he quit as the president of the Punjab Congress, and none of his demands have been addressed. Nothing's really happening. I don't think he's even met the Gandhis since then. He's been doing random things. While the CM, he's ostensibly been dribbling against Mr. Channi. He's been with the Gandhi family when they were in Lakhimpur Kheri. All of those things. So I think what the Gandhi family did was they just used Mr. Sidhu as a figurehead. I don't think they wanted a situation where it was just, they were doing it completely remote control from Delhi. Once Amrinder Singh was out, they played their cards well or whoever is advising them, played their cards well in making Mr. Channi the CM, and and this was something a bunch of us were discussing the day he was made the CM. Once you have a Dalit CM in a state like Punjab with its symbolism of Dalit politics, the highest Dalit population. Interestingly, the BSP was born in Punjab. Kanchi Ram did a lot of his initial political work in Punjab. It's not going to be very easy to remove this person as chief minister after the elections, right? And I think Sidhu, I don't know if he realized that initially, but he realized that very fast, to his credit, and he's been trying to make his moves. But I think he's fundamentally been a bit outmaneuvered, right? Because he has no other options left now. He is, I think, in talks with AAP, I heard, or I don't know. I mean, he's just flouncing about like a deer in the headlights, right? To try and use a wannabe Sidhuism, and he's not really succeeding, right? He's just roaming around like a lost soul.
And interestingly, this chief minister post had potential contenders like Sunil Jakhar, Pratap Bajwa, and others, right? And they were all ignored. As you mentioned, I mean, I think Charanjit Singh Channi was a very deliberate choice for this chief minister post. So how does this pair with, the rise of AAP and, now having the first Dalit CM as well? How does it influence the political dynamics of the state itself?
So a couple of things here, right? The first thing was when they replaced Amrinder Singh, if they weren't going to make Sidhu the CM, because Sidhu is reasonably popular in Punjab, right? I mean, I think some people do overstate his popularity, but he was definitely, I think at the time of the removal of Amrinder Singh, the most popular Congress leader in Punjab. So if they didn't want to make Sidhu the CM for whatever reason, then they had to come up with a compelling story, right? And that's where all of these options, and that's where I think Ambika Soni's name came up. Maybe the story there, if at all it was a serious consideration, was that she is a Hindu. And the idea was to appeal to Punjabi Hindus. She's also, I think, a Khatri, unlike Sunil Jakhar, who's a Hindu Jat, which is a community that has very little numbers in Punjab. The other option, like, what's the point of making some other Jat Sikh a CM, right? I mean, Randhawa or Pratap Singh Bajwa or anybody. There's no, like, if you're going to go with the Jat Sikh a CM, the most obvious choice would be Sidhu. If you didn't want to go with Sidhu, then you had to, because then you couldn't also keep Sidhu as the PCC chief, because you couldn't really have, the CM being a Jat Sikh, the PCC chief being a Jat Sikh, especially when you're the Congress and, your core support base is not really Jat Sikh. So that's where Channi comes in, right? In the sense that Dalits are a very strong voting bloc in Punjab. They've by and large been Congress supporters, or there's been some erosion in support over the last decade or so to the Akali. At least there's a story that, Channi can, do something, then add something to the table if he's there in place of Sidhu, unlike the others. That's what I think is the gamble that's been played by the Congress. In terms of electoral base, I think I'm not sure, right? In the sense that I think AAP and the Akalis were anyway getting a bulk of the Jat Sikh votes, and that's, I think, going to be the case even now. And that's again where I think the Congress did do a smart move, right? Because at least their idea here is to try and consolidate Dalits under Mr. Channi's leadership, because they CM resigned to not getting the Jat Sikh vote, which I think is a reasonable assumption. So they thought that at least with the Dalit CM, they can make a play for the Dalit vote and use that identity as the cornerstone of their campaign, because their governance has been nothing to write home about, and there's massive anti-incumbency, sorry. So that's where I think they've tried it, and the Akalis have tied up with the BSP, which is again trying to get Dalit votes. So let's see how that plays out. I don't think Punjab's social structure really works for having such a Dalit-focused campaign, but that's clearly the gamble the Congress has taken, and there's some logic to it.
Throughout all of this, we have seen Rahul and Priyanka Gandhi at the helm of it. They are at least seen as calling the shots. What do you make of that? I mean, on a score of 1 to 10, what do you give them, right? In the way that they've handled this whole situation, and do you also see that at some point Sonia Gandhi will be slightly more hands-off?
I think Sonia Gandhi is very hands-off, right? I mean, I think she's the president because Rahul refuses to be the president. Like, he resigned right after 2019 and she became the interim president. She's not even the full-time president. She's not taken on that title. I don't think she's very active, and whichever state, whatever's happening, a bulk of the action seems to be driven by Rahul Gandhi, Priyanka Gandhi, and whoever else is in their inner circle, like KC Venugopal or a bunch of other people. So in terms of handling the system, I think at least they had a thesis, right? I mean, or at least you could say they had an objective of getting rid of Amrinder, which I think does make electoral sense. He was unpopular. Their plan to get rid of him through Sidhu, using Sidhu as a front, clearly worked, because, I mean, while Amrinder was creating a lot of ruckus on TV, I don't think there was any real problem in the legislature party, right? Which is what and I don't think there's much of a problem in the Punjab Congress. I mean, yes, the Congress looked a bit stupid on national TV for around a day because, Amrinder was saying all sorts of things, but that's fine, right? I mean, that's a choice they were willing to play. And the choice of Chani also, I think, based on, again, what I just mentioned in the previous question, I think it did have a certain internal logic and it seemed to make sense. But I think where they sort of goofed up, or I wouldn't say they goofed up actually, they were just caught off guard, is the sheer randomness of Navjot Sidhu, right? Like, I think they thought that he would play along at least till the elections. He's refused and he's been creating chaos. That's where I think this whole thing, their political management to an unbiased observer would have been very good till Navjot Sidhu revolted, right? And Navjot Sidhu revolting was, again, I'm not sure what is the electoral consequence, though I do think it will have more of a consequence than Amrinder Singh, but it just made them look slightly stupid across the country because they had inserted Navjot Sidhu and he just suddenly revolted. It just made them look a bit foolish in both, and it also made the Punjab Congress look divided. In leaving aside Amrinder Singh's outbursts, and that was not the conclusion one could get from the initial rebellion.
So let's speak of some of the following political maneuvers that have happened, right? So we had Captain Amrinder Singh meeting the Home Minister Shri Amit Shah earlier in Delhi. What does that signify? Do you think the captain can actually be serious about joining the BJP? We've seen like a massive divide on the farm laws, for instance, right? Or is all of this just political symbolism?
I think right now, anyone in Punjab joining the BJP is not going to help them or the BJP. Right? And it would be a lose-lose if you ask me to start with. First, the BJP is very unpopular in Punjab. And this unpopularity is not restricted only to Sikhs or Jat Sikhs. Now, of course, certain communities are standing at the front of being against the BJP, but there's a general dislike towards the BJP, right? Which is in stark contrast to even 2019, where actually Hindus did vote in larger numbers for the NDA than in 2014 in Punjab. But I don't think the case today. Amrinder Singh joining the BJP, I don't think will help Amrinder Singh a lot. The BJP has a lot of baggage right now, and I think at least it will take this election cycle for that to change. The second thing is Amrinder Singh himself, I think, is personally unpopular. While he can, probably still, if he creates a party, get 4 to 5% votes or a couple of seats at best. I don't think beyond that he has any real scene in Punjab at this moment. And him joining the BJP, I think, is going to be a net negative for both. Probably makes sense if he is indeed collaborating with the BJP to properly have a situation where they're sort of collaborating but not have a formal alliance or even be in the party. I don't think would be the right option for either.
So undoubtedly, I think the party that stands to gain or potentially gain from all of this the most is AAP, right? And I think Arvind Kejriwal also realizes that, and so you see a lot of frantic activity on that front. So what do you make of AAP's chances in the upcoming elections?
If you look at the opinion polls, and I think we should give C voters been the most, they're the ones who are polling the most, and they got Bengal fairly correct, right? I mean, their opinion polls, so we should give them some credit. AAP is the front runner in Punjab, right? I mean, whatever I've been speaking to a lot of people in Punjab, the general impression seems to be that AAP is a front runner, but doesn't look like they will get a majority. That again comes from the fact that the AAP doesn't have a CM candidate, right? And that points to the problems the AAP has, because one Kejriwal obviously doesn't want somebody else to be the CM of Punjab. Punjab is a much bigger state than Delhi. Delhi is not really a state. That's how it would be for any national party, right? You wouldn't want the national leader wouldn't want someone else stealing the thunder, so as to speak. So that's why I think Kejriwal is dilly-dallying on announcing a CM candidate. The other thing is a lot of the prominent people who joined AAP in its initial expansion, Punjab, have left the party, no longer active with it, like an HS Fulka or some other. So the AAP doesn't really, they're trying to get some non-political person to be the CM candidate, but they're struggling. And the thing that's going to happen here really is that there is clearly a lot of anti-community against the Congress. At the same time, Congress has played a political maneuver by having a Dalit CM. Well, of course, it can galvanize Dalits. It's also pissed off Jats. They've been in power for pretty much the entire time the modern state has been formed, except for, I think, one chief minister. So there's a clear controversy there. So that is where I think AAP's failure to have a CM candidate might help the Akalis, but I'm not sure. It might even help the Congress. But otherwise, I think the AAP was in pole position till Amrinder Singh was deposed. And I'm not sure about Mr. Channi, right? Because at least his initial 1 month, I think he's about to complete a month in office, has not been very, he hasn't come across as great on a good governance scale of things, right? So it's possible that if AAP gets a better CM candidate or someone who's able to evoke more confidence, especially among the middle classes, they might go towards AAP. But I think that's
where do the Akalis figure in all of this? I mean, they have some sort of a moral high ground that they can take, right? Saying that they quit the alliance basis the farm laws and so on. We have seen they have been fairly unpopular as well. So where do they figure in this?
I think that there are two problems Akalis are facing, right? One is, as you rightly mentioned, Prakash Singh Badal is very old. Everyone knows he is no longer going to be the CM. So there's going to be an Akali CM, it's Sukhbir Badal, and he's not very popular. Fairly or unfairly, he's not a vote getter. The other, and there's also a lot of negative memories about the Akali last rule. Not that the current government is more popular or anything, but that's why people do want to give the AAP a chance, right? In the sense that it's at least a change, a proper change. The second problem for the Akalis is that the farm laws, I think, were passed initially in June or May 2020. The Akalis quit only when it became a big issue. I think it was July or August. So there's a lot of this thing that the Akalis are, still BJP agents, or they're too close to the BJP. They're still tainted with their association with the BJP. So I'm not sure how much of a boost they can get overcoming that, but definitely they have a committed vote bank. They are a very organized party. That's how they managed to win even in 2012. So I wouldn't say they're on their way to extinction or something. They'll definitely survive, but I'm not sure if they'll be in a position to get power. But I think they'll have enough seats to make a play for something in a Hung Assembly.
In the case of a Hung Assembly or some kind of a very weak alliance as such, right? BJP could actually stand to gain, right? I mean, they could actually be the difference between who comes to power. And historically, as you mentioned, BJP has not been strong in the state, but this could be the opening that they have been looking for, right? I mean, we've seen what BJP has done in Bihar over the last couple of decades, for instance, right? With alliance politics and so on. So what do you feel about BJP's chances?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned is correct in the sense that obviously the BJP will now have a bigger chance to grow now that they're no longer with the Akalis in Punjab. But leaving that aside, the BJP, as I mentioned, is right now not a very popular party in Punjab. It have at least one electoral cycle to go through before that sort of changes. So that's something that the BJP will need to figure out. There's obviously some sort of a vacuum for a BJP type politics in Punjab. I mean, Punjab is not homogeneously Sikh or something like that. The BJP's image as a Hindu party should permanently hobble it. But I don't think this is the right election for that. And I don't think the BJP will be in a position to even get seats at this point or make much of a choice because they just simply don't have the ability to win a lot of seats in Punjab. And I don't think anyone would want the BJP support first.
So the elections are in February and March of next year, and a lot could happen in that time. So if you were to look in the crystal ball for us, what do you see happening in the next few months leading to the elections?
I don't think anything more is going to happen. The only real question are two, right? One is whether Amrinder Singh will actually form a new party or do something, or he'll just sit quiet as he seems to be doing right now. The second is whether AAP will have a CM candidate or not. There's only two things that we can basically look forward to.
Right. But in your opinion, I think AAP is the front runner.
I still think it'll be a hung assembly. Yeah, I don't think AAP is in a position to get a majority for now, but it'll definitely be the single largest party is what I think as of now. That's what the polls are saying.
So finally, to round things off, I'd like to get your thoughts on the larger significance of some of these things, right? So we'll start with the farm laws. You think there will be some kind of a compromise to maybe humor some of the interests in Punjab?
No, I don't think so. I think if it would have happened, it would have happened, man. If at all, I think it will happen. It will happen if the BJP loses in UP. One, I'm not sure if the BJP will lose UP, but even if they lose, even then, I'm not sure that they'll actually play along with the fun.
The second thing is that Punjab is a border state, right? And we've just seen that the center has enhanced the powers of BSF in the state, right? So, what do you see as an impact on national security itself?
So this is something that I don't want to make some pronouncements on, in the sense that, see, obviously a stable government in Punjab is very key to national security, and that's something that Amrinder Singh has been harping on for the past few years. But at the same time, Punjab is a state, and you don't really want a situation where you want the central government taking over things also. So I think whoever is in power in Punjab, it will be incumbent on both the state government as well as central government to create a harmonious relationship and ensure that at least Pakistan or other agents can't take advantage of that.
Finally, Punjab is one of the last remaining states of the Congress. How important do you think it is for them to retain it, and what do you see as an impact to the Congress party itself?
I think it's very important, right, in the sense that over the last few months, and differing from what we have discussed before, even on our previous shows, we've seen people try to capture the Congress space, right, whether it's AAP in Gujarat, Uttarakhand, Punjab, of course, Goa. The TMC has turned up in Goa, it's turned up in Tripura, it's got Sushmita Dev in the Congress in Assam, it's been trying to get others in Meghalaya. So clearly a lot of people now think that the Congress is weak, they want to go for it. Try and, occupy the anti-BJP space. And right now, the elections that are coming, if the Congress is unable to win any of the states the BJP holds today, right? Because Goa, Uttarakhand, and even Manipur are all states that are traditionally Congress BJP fights, or were expected to be at least 6 months back. The Congress unable to win a single one of them, and it loses Punjab, it's going to create huge problems. In the sense that I think that will create serious issues for the Congress, even in its remaining core states, right? Like your Gujarat or MP or even a Rajasthan. The Congress is going to see more defections. More people are going to be convinced that, to beat the BJP, the Congress is a problem rather than the solution or the vehicle to beat the BJP. That's going to be a huge problem.
All right, Rohit. Thank you so much again for joining us on this podcast. This was a fascinating conversation. I think we covered a lot of ground, many different facets of Punjab politics. So thank you again, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you for having me.